which is our target amount. Now, remember, my lid was sanitized. I took my spoon out of my sanitized jug. I'm going to stir my yeast again just to make sure there's not, when I pour it in, that none's going to be stuck to the bottom, that it's completely rehydrated, no clumps, and we're good to go. So, I'm done with that spoon now. So, I'm going to add the yeast. We are at the perfect temperature. Now, it also says that if we need to add water to get to our 4-gallon boil mark, to just add water. So, I have my charcoal filtered water that I've been using here for everything. So I'm going to add it to my yeast bowl so that if there's any yeast left in the bowl, that I'm going to rinse it out too. And I'm going to get about a quart of water here. Okay. Now, let's take the quart of water that I rinsed and go right to the 4-gallon mark. Okay. Perfect. Now we're going to take the sanitized lid and put back on here. Now, here is the critical point. Because what they say is when you add the yeast, you should stir vigorously. I have another solution. Being that these nice carboys have a great handle, put your lid on really tight and shake the crap out of it. What you want to do is aerate. Let a little air in. You're gonna spill some of the stuff over, but that's all right because you're gonna clean it up later. But you want to get as much oxygen into that work as you can, so that the yeast has something to work on. And I do this even with my extract brews that I was doing before, is that I would do this vigorously for at least 3 minutes. Now, you can see how much foam that creates. That foam is oxygen. And you're getting all that oxygen. You can see how kind of cloudy this got down in here. You're getting all this oxygen into it so the yeast has something to work on. One more time. Okay. Now, I'm going to let that off, let some of the pressure off, snug that on, and now I'm going to show you what you need to do to have a blowout. You either have a siphon, an airlock, so that no oxygen can get back in here. Once it starts fermenting, it needs to work on this. So you want the gas, the CO2 that this creates, to get out, but you don't want fresh oxygen and contaminants to get back in. So you do that either with an airlock, or in this volume, it's suggested to run a tube into a jug. And I'll show you what that looks like. Here's my setup. Really simple. That lid has a grommet in it And I just took this off of one that's already gone through its main fermentation stage, so I'm going to sanitize that again and just rinse anything off that might be on there. It's nice and clean. And screw it on here. Now, what you do then is take your tube and put it in the top. And then you run this tube down into a gallon of water. Well, a half a gallon. And what this does is as the gas builds up in here, the gas goes into the water and it bubbles in here. But being that the end of this tube is down in the jug, in the water, it won't allow air to go back in and contaminate the beer. It'll allow the CO2 to get out, but air not to get back in. So this is my simple rig. You know, a couple dollars worth of tubing and a 20-cent electrical grommet. Drill a hole in the cap, and you're done. Now, in the next 12 to 24 hours, as that yeast starts really getting active and it starts consuming that sugar, this foam is going to build. And you're going to just see this just bubble in there. It almost looks like it's boiling. And it's just going to boil and boil, and you're going to see that. And then at maybe 2 to 3 days into it, 4 days into it, it'll start to go down until you won't see any foam at all. And at that point, the danger zone is really gone as far as this boiling over, flowing over into your jug and things, which is what this is for. This will catch that. And at that point, then you don't have to worry so much about it. And if you do get an airlock, you can just remove this tube and pop an airlock in real quick. And then it'll still get rid of its gas, but you don't have to worry about it boiling over in the bottom of your closet or something somewhere. Hey, at that point, we just made beer. Now this particular batch calls to primary ferment for 4 days at about 68 degrees. And then from there, I'm going to transfer it into a secondary fermenter, which will be another jug like this. Transfer it into a secondary, and then I'm going to add 0.2 ounces more of the Cascade hops, and that's called dry hopping. And then it's going to sit in the secondary fermenter for 7 days. Now, once it goes through that secondary fermentation process, then we're going to measure the final gravity, and we're going to bottle it. Now, at that point, it's only been 11 days. So we're kind of bottling it a little bit green. They usually like to see it at least 2 weeks in fermentation, and sometimes a lot longer. But this one's a little different, because this one's going to be held after bottled. It's going to be held at about 50 to 55 degrees for 4 more weeks. And that's called bottle conditioning. So at that point, before it ever goes to the fridge, it's going to sit for another 4 weeks. And that's going to consume that bottle sugar